So if you don't want to be recorded, feel free to turn off the camera. I definitely understand. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to our May Lunch and Learn, using college admissions to set students up for long-term success. My name is Olga Marable. I am the Director of Admissions for Fusion Academy, Rockville. For those who are not familiar with Fusion Academy, we are a revolutionary private middle and high school serving 6th through 12th grade, where positive relationships unlock academic potential. All courses are one-to-one, one student and one teacher per classroom. This allows teachers to customize curriculum and teaching for each student's individual strengths, interests, and learning style. Our supportive campus environment is a unique space that includes a state-of-the-art recording studio, mixed media art studio, a homework cafe where students complete all their homework before going home. Flexible scheduling lets students enroll at any time of the year through rolling admissions and take classes at a time of day that works best for them between 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. In addition to full-time or part-time school students, we also offer tutoring support and have over 250 course offerings. We offer a fine balance between academics as well as social emotional support through the homework cafe, clubs, and activities. While we do have 85 campuses nationwide, including our 100% virtual program, allowing for self-paced or asynchronous schooling, in the DMV, we have 7 campuses. This includes our DC, Loudoun, Reston, Tysons, Alexandria, Rockville, and Columbia campuses. Our campuses still have openings for the summertime, and we are enrolling for the fall. So inquire today if you're interested. A little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, this is going to be recorded. I will send the recording link to everybody who attended and anybody who registered and couldn't attend. So that will be received. If you want to keep your camera off, I totally respect that. But do keep yourself muted until we get to the Q&A, because we, of course, don't want to distract the speaker. And also make sure your name on Zoom is your name. So feel free to rename it to make sure it's your name so I can address you the right way. The chat will remain open throughout the entire presentation, so feel free to use it for collaboration, networking, but I am going to hold questions until the end. So if you have any questions you throw in during the presentation, I will hold on to them. We will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And then when you do ask questions, please make sure that they are appropriate and not too personal, because this is being recorded and a lot of people have that information. So I want to do a little bit of icebreaker just to see who is on this call right now. So in the chat, let's utilize that. If you want to throw in, how do I get to the chat? Let's see. They like redid Zoom. There we go. If you throw in your name, your email address, your title, if you have a business, and here's the fun part, throw in your favorite ice cream flavor. I mean, it's like officially the unofficial summer weekend. So I just threw in the chat my name, my title, my contact if anybody needs it. And then my favorite ice cream flavor is pistachio. It is so good. So feel free to throw yours in, and it just lets everybody kind of get to know each other. Robin, you're driving. Please don't participate. So I'll let you guys take a second to do that. Hey, Rachel. Hey, Zoe. Oh, Robin, mint chocolate chip. Red light. Good. That makes me feel better. Pistachio. Maria, fun fact, I just got back from Italy and they had the most amazing pistachio gelato. Like, I tried a different flavor once and then I was like, no, I'm going to stick to my pistachio literally every day for 10 days. I had pistachio gelato. Hi, Elizabeth. Cream is buttercream or butter pecan. Oh, that's really good too. Mint chocolate chip, chocolate peanut butter. Rachel. Oh, these all sound so good. Okay, now I'm definitely gonna have to go get ice cream after this. All right, so feel free to keep throwing that in the chat. I want to share how this topic is relevant to Fusion Academy. Obviously, we are a school 6th through 12th grade, and we have seniors graduating every year. Our Rockville campus actually has graduation next Friday. We do it at Biz Arts in downtown Rockville. It's a beautiful ceremony that we hold. We have 20 seniors graduating this year. And where they all end up is going to be different for every student. Post-secondary may include community college, a small liberal arts school, gap year, going straight into the work field, an internship year, or Ivy League. So every student's journey is, of course, different. We do offer post-secondary counseling support, and it's not just for Fusion students, it's also for students who attend other local private schools. We start support from freshman year all the way through senior year, and we offer ACT, SAT test prep. So just wanted to share that with you for those who don't know. But I do want to introduce our speaker. Sumaiya Olatunde is the owner of H2D Counseling, LLC, which supports neurotypical and neurodivergent students from pre-K to graduate school. She has worked with hundreds of students and families nationally and internationally. Her expertise as an educational consultant spans nearly 3 decades in admissions counseling, academic advising, financial aid counseling, and career counseling. Sumaiya is also an educational advocate for K through 12 and higher educational students needing help with issues related to IEPs, 504 plans, admissions, standardized testing accommodations. She deeply enjoys working with students, problem solving on complex cases, and helping to make education more equitable to all. Sumaiya has a background in research and community organizing. She is a certified crisis counselor, and she holds degrees in molecular biology, African American studies, anthropology, and counseling. Sumaiya is the parent of a neurodiverse second grader who she considers to be the greatest joy and accomplishment. Sumaiya has a forthcoming article addressing parents on similar topics in college admissions that will be published in July issue of the Washington Parent Magazine. So be on the lookout for that. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our presenter.
Today I'm going to talk about using college admissions to set students up for long-term success. The topics that we will cover include the college applications, and this is going to be from my perspective. I'm going to go into different components of the application and then talk about students and mental health and how those relate to success. Then I'm going to discuss what caregivers can do to help their students. I'll review a general timeline as well as ways that students can become college ready. There's also a lot of common stresses that students experience during the application process, and I'm going to touch on that and then briefly discuss some aspects of financial aid before a Q&A session. The college admissions process is often underestimated by students and families. Getting into college is only one step in this lifelong process leading to a career. I like to use this process to create opportunities for students and help them to go through their own self-discovery, which can begin long before a student applies to colleges. The process of college admissions is often a very different one for students and colleges. Students approach it like dating. They spend so much time trying to impress colleges, whereas colleges are trying to develop a long-term relationship with students that they admit. If a student treats this process like a short-term relationship, just trying to impress a college without individualizing their application and failing to build a connection, colleges are not likely to want to invest in you. The question that students should be asking themselves is, are they conveying who they are in an interesting way throughout the application? This is what the process is really about. I also encourage students and families not to hand all their power over during this process because they are a consumer and they should continually ask who is vetting whom in this process. Although colleges are extensively assessing students, families and students should be doing the same thing with colleges that they are applying to. There are many common myths and mistakes in the college admissions process, and I want to focus on some that involve writing the essays, which is one of the hardest parts for many students. So in terms of the general college essay, you need to create an emotional connection with the reader. The way that students should do this is by using their authentic voice. Many of my students come to me thinking that they have to have a catchy intro or a sob story, as they put it. You have to be careful with this because the goal is to really connect with the reader, Additionally, students oftentimes ask me about the perfect essay, but this does not exist, not in a general sense across students. In other words, one student's essay will not translate into another student's story. The best essay topic is not necessarily an obvious choice. It is based on what is easy for a student to write about. What makes a good essay comes down to what a student conveys about themselves in the essay rather than the topic itself. Many students tell me that their English teacher or another adult has told them to, quote, show and not tell in their writing. However, there's a limit to this. Keep in mind that you really need to know your audience. Some students make the mistake of going over the top with their imagery and descriptiveness, and their essay sounds like they're writing for Broadway with a lot of exclamation marks and exaggerations in their tone of voice. This is not really how students speak, and their true personality does not come through this way. So it is often not an effective essay. While it is a good idea to get feedback, there are different levels of help. You may get help from your friends, your parents, your teachers, or a professional like myself, but the best help highlights your own voice and showcases your personality while being competitive. You should be aware that supplemental essays have a very different purpose and structure from the general essay, and oftentimes students make the mistake of writing their general essay like a supplemental essay. The main difference between a general essay and a supplemental essay is the focus. A general essay focuses on the student, such as who they are, and gives the college a sense of their personality, character, problem-solving skills, and things like that. A supplemental essay focuses more on something external to the student, like an activity or an accomplishment or an achievement. I said previously that the universal perfect essay doesn't exist. Each student can create a perfect essay for themselves. A good general essay lets people into the student's world, and it can also provide the student with more self-discovery through this process. The goal of the essay is to translate who you are and how you want to be seen by the colleges. Parents and students shouldn't panic about the perfect essay because only you can tell your story. What really makes each essay and application unique is that each student is unique. Yet, knowing what aspects of yourself to highlight is what is challenging and can determine if a student stands out in a good way or at all. Essays need to reflect the student's authentic voice for another reason as well. Students should be aware that colleges use software to detect whether they have written the essay themselves and whether they have plagiarized their essay. You want to be really careful having other people write your essays for you and how much they help you with your essay. In terms of the competitive applicant, there's more to a student than their grades, their extracurricular activities, and their standardized test scores. Colleges have questions, and they use their application to give you a sense of what they're interested in knowing. But what makes each college application tricky is that it is essentially in coded language, and colleges differ in terms of their process for reviewing applications and their goals throughout the process. Nevertheless, there are some similarities and ways to figure out what they're looking for. The more an applicant gives the college the answers to the questions that they are asking, the more competitive they are likely to be. You need to be familiar with each college when you work on their application and be able to demonstrate a good fit between you and the college. Having a cohesive application means that the entire application is consistent throughout all of the components. Your story should also be believable, and your goals should be clearly defined in your application. Parents and students typically think that visiting a college in order to show that they are interested in that college demonstrates this. This is a very low bar to show interest because anyone can do this, and many students even mention it in their applications. An important matter for students who have had challenges during high school is knowing whether to explain any issues that have occurred during high school, like a poor grade in a particular class or things that might negatively stand out to the college. Some more common myths and mistakes in the college application process are: should a student who is neurodivergent such as having a diagnosis of some kind or accommodations in school, should they disclose their disability? This really depends on the student and their circumstances. It is neither a good thing nor a bad thing to disclose your disability. The admissions team will not be aware of your disability or specific accommodations unless you disclose them. So you shouldn't assume that they already know. In terms of whether or not it would be a good idea to share this information depends on what the student's entire record looks like. For example, if a student has fluctuating grades and there's no other way to explain it other than their disability, then you might consider sharing it so that you're filling in the gaps that the colleges might have when they look at your application. This is actually a complex question, and I deal with it individually for every student. This is where my other role as an educational advocate makes a difference because I can help a student assess their situation and guide them on what to share and what not to share to best help their application. Another common myth is whether or not to take the SAT or ACT multiple times to get a better score. Sometimes doing so is actually a waste of time for students. Some circumstances where it may make sense is if the student didn't really prepare the previous time and they plan to the next time, or their practice tests show a significant jump in their performance. It is important to understand that some colleges do not superscore and require that you provide all of your scores to them. In terms of extracurricular involvement, all activities are not regarded equally by colleges. There's a hierarchy between them. For instance, summer programs at a university that you pay to attend will not be regarded on the same level as a summer program that you competitively applied for and were accepted into. In addition, if you have a leadership role in an organization, this will be more highly ranked than if you're just a member. But you don't need to be a leader in everything that you do, which can actually undermine the believability of your application. You don't need to visit colleges before you apply, so families should not feel pressured to do so. It's not feasible or affordable for many families to do this, and visiting isn't going to necessarily give you an advantage. The idea of the best college comes down to the fit between the student and the college rather than a college's ranking. A more highly ranked college isn't necessarily going to be a better fit for a student. It's really about what each college provides and the kind of experience you would have there and how it aligns with your goals. Students and parents often think that there is an advantage to applying early decision and early action. For those who don't know, early decision is binding and early action is not. However, applying early is mostly beneficial to colleges because it helps them with their numbers and budgeting in the future. Colleges will tell you that there's not a substantial benefit for students who apply early, and a lot of times families don't believe this, but it's true because the early application period is designed for students who are the most competitive, and these students would be given more consideration and more likely be admitted whether they apply during the early application or the regular application deadline. In terms of applying to colleges, I say play the long game. What I mean by this is take time to explore what you enjoy and make sure to apply this to the classes you choose and the extracurricular activities you're involved in, and this will benefit you in many ways. You will discover things about yourself that will help you in college, and you will be able to talk about it in your application more easily and more genuinely, and this will come across. So, which students get into which colleges is a very difficult and exciting time for students. Some students and parents wonder why less qualified students are admitted in place of more qualified students. This reflects a misunderstanding of the process. Colleges have a mission to create a better world through education, and they recognize the importance of diversity in creating a cohort. Diversity is part of their vision for creating a better world. It's not just about who has the best grades and is the most involved. They look at the whole student and then they try to balance out who they're admitting each year to create a diverse community of students. The way that colleges define diversity includes many aspects of a person, not just ethnicity and gender, but also the region of the country or world that they come from and their unique set of experiences. In addition, the decision comes down to the fit as well. Because one student may seem more competitive compared to another, the fit between the other student matches better with the college's culture and goals, and that student might be admitted over the one that seems to be more competitive. What I try to get students and families to focus on rather than being accepted is to accept the outcome and focus on what you can control. How a student responds to the decision really matters, and it sets them up for many opportunities and the ups and downs that they'll have in their lives. In other words, how you play, win, and lose matters. The idea that some admitted students are less qualified than others is really about a false sense of entitlement. There is no guarantee that anyone will get into any university, in large part because there are far more applicants than there are spaces. Qualified students are denied every single year, thousands of them. Many students that colleges reject are ones that they wish they could admit. So students shouldn't think that a denial is a measure of their value or their worth. In addition, no two colleges give the same experience to a student because each one has their own people, their own faculty, their own student population. Even colleges with very similar opportunities and resources will provide a very different experience from one college to the next because of the people who make up that community. Students should also keep in mind that this is only the first of many big life decisions, and they'll have a lot of great things that will come to them in the future. Now I'm going to move on to other aspects of the admissions process beyond the applications. I want to talk about students and mental health and how this relates to their success. Anxiety and depression and suicide rates among youth have steadily been increasing for a number of years, and the age of onset has been lowering. Both of these facts are very concerning. Applying to college is a contributing factor and has had a negative effect on the mental health of many high school students. In the freshman year of college, students have the highest dropout rate, in part because many of them are underprepared for the level of independence that comes with going to college, and many are unaware of important college rules and policies. The way that parents and guardians can support their students is an incredibly important one in terms of their college success. What caregivers can do to help their students is to help prepare them from a very young age by giving them increasing opportunities for independence, decision making, and accountability as they grow, and by doing this in a developmentally appropriate way at each age. Also, help your student to minimize their stress. This does not mean to do the applications for them. As I have said already, there are many reasons why students really need to go through this process themselves, and this process actually helps prepare them and helps get them ready for college so that they're more likely to be successful once they get there. Another thing that parents can do is to let their students have fun. Peers and friends are a very big deal to students at this point in their lives, and they need to have opportunities to interact with them and have fun with them and have some downtime. Nevertheless, try not to make excuses for them while they're in high school. Students need to fail when the risks are lower. Here is a general timeline for the college admissions process, and I have highlighted 11th grade because that's really where colleges are going to focus because it's the most recent full year to consider academically and in terms of extracurricular involvement. Oftentimes I'll hear from families that contact me in the junior or senior year and feel badly because they feel as though they should have started much sooner. But that's not necessarily true. Many students aren't ready to engage in the admissions process before 11th grade, and before this, they find it overwhelming to consider their future and their goals as well as their interests and how they translate into careers. On the other hand, some students are so focused earlier and start to consider these things at a younger age, and for them, it helps to alleviate their stress by participating in this process sooner. It really just depends on the student. For students to become college ready, they need to develop and practice good habits before going to college, and this is critical. It is helpful that students can use the application process to become increasingly responsible and accountable. Here are some ways that they can do that. They need to start their application early. Ideally, they can use the summer right after their junior year to start working on the application. It is much more work than students ever imagine. They need to know all the requirements for the applications, and there are differences between high school graduation requirements versus college admissions requirements. A lot of times, students and parents aren't aware of these differences. The art requirement is one key example that affects eligibility for applying to many colleges. For colleges, art needs to be a full year of two sequential classes of increasing difficulty in the same type of art, such as Ceramics A and Ceramics B. It cannot be one semester of ceramics and one semester of drawing. The foreign language requirement for graduating high school and applying to college is also different. For most colleges, you need a minimum of 2 full years of one foreign language. If a student has taken the language in middle school, they can do just 1 year in high school as long as that year will give them at least 2 years of that language. However, if they have taken more than the equivalent of 2 years in middle school, they still must complete at least 1 year in high school. Some colleges will tell you in their admissions requirements that they prefer more than 2 years, so going beyond 2 years could be beneficial. Students also need to know all the components of each application, and it's helpful if they actually look at the application in advance. A good application to become familiar with is the Common Application, particularly the General Application section of it. One section that would be helpful for students to know about early on, even at the beginning of high school, is the extracurricular activity section, because college admissions limit how much you can share in terms of activities. For example, if you're volunteering an hour here or a few hours there through unrelated activities, this doesn't look as good, but it will give you your SSL or community service hours for high school. Say you volunteered 20 times in this way. When it comes to the application, you're limited to sharing only 10 activities, sometimes fewer for other types of applications. You won't be able to show all that you have done. It's better for students to become a part of an organization or a program and continually work with the same ones, because it will look like you were more involved when you have to indicate how much time you spent with each extracurricular activity in the application. This is true both in terms of the amount of time you spent over the course of a year as well as the number of years you were involved in that activity. In terms of all of the required documents that a student needs to submit for their application, including transcripts, letters of recommendation, and SAT, ACT, AP, or IB scores, these all need to be requested well in advance of the deadlines. Students must meet all of the deadlines, and they vary among colleges. It's a lot to keep track of, which is why starting early is beneficial. Following through and following up with all of the colleges is important as well. After submitting your application, there still may be additional steps, and this will vary between colleges. Students need to pay attention to these additional steps and continually check the email that they gave to the colleges. Some colleges give you a student account and you need to follow up with it to complete certain tasks. Failing to follow up and follow through with the college often results in being denied admission. I encourage students to ask for help before something becomes a problem, because it's much easier to resolve something before it becomes bad or worse. There's a lot of stress throughout the college admissions process, and when I'm working with families, I try to minimize their stress during the process. One of the ways that parents and students can minimize stress is not to compare the student to other students. This is really an individual process, and comparing one student to another does not reflect an understanding of this process. It also causes emotional distress among families. You can't really predict or determine how a college is going to evaluate one student to another, because this process is about more than the academic profile of a student. There are ways to get a sense of how competitive you are and how likely you are to be admitted, but not based on a comparison, because you really don't know what another student's application entails, like their letters of recommendation, for example. As I said with the timeline, students should start this process by 11th grade. The number of AP classes a student takes is also individualized. School districts push students to take as many as possible, but what needs to be considered is the effect that this has on the student. The right number of AP classes is as many as a student can take and still have a balanced life and be able to perform their best. It also should tie into the goals they have, and they should be taking AP classes and other classes that make sense for them. In terms of being active and involved, students should not be overwhelmed or participating in things that do not interest them because they're not going to give their best or discuss it well in their application. In terms of obsessing over a perfect score, as I said, this is oftentimes not necessary or beneficial. The SAT and ACT have standard deviations, and there is not a substantial difference between, for example, a 1600 compared to a 1570 on the SAT. Many colleges do not consider AP exam scores, but they can be helpful in other ways, particularly if the student got a 5 or a 4. Some colleges let you use those scores to get out of taking some classes, but in most cases I encourage students to take as many of the classes as possible in college because it's going to be at a different level even if you took an AP level class in high school. In terms of taking advanced STEM classes, this really depends on what your goals are, what your interests are, and whether you are likely to do well in these classes. I feel that the solution to minimizing stress is trying to establish joy and balance in your life and knowing your limits. With respect to financing college, I often hear questions from parents who are concerned about the cost. Many ask me about scholarships, and what I tell them is that applying to scholarships is incredibly time consuming, sometimes more so than applying to colleges, because scholarship applications are very individualized and you have to do a considerable amount of searching for the scholarships that you are eligible for. You also have to apply to many scholarships to get differing amounts of aid. This can take away from very valuable time that a student could be spending improving their classes, being more involved in extracurricular activities, and even taking care of themselves, getting enough rest, and having downtime so that they perform better overall. Families need to weigh the costs and benefits of applying to scholarships. Every student, regardless of the family's income, should complete the FAFSA because colleges use the FAFSA to determine the financial aid award. Even for families who don't expect any aid, their student may still be eligible for institutional merit-based scholarships, but they still need to complete the FAFSA in order to receive this award. Students should consider taking a financial literacy class before college, but this does not need to be part of their transcript. They can take it in their high school or outside of their high school. Either way, it would be a good idea for every student to go into college having some sense of how to manage their finances, particularly if cost is an issue. There are different types of financial aid. There's institutional aid from the college a student is attending and private scholarships from outside organizations. There are subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. You want to take the subsidized loans if you have the option. Subsidized means that the interest rate is not going to start to accrue on top of the principal of the loan until after you are no longer a student. This includes graduate school. There are different types of free money, and those include scholarships, grants, and fellowships. These can be merit-based, based on the student's performance. They can be income-based on financial need, and there are special interest groups. One common way that caregivers try to mitigate financial cost is through tuition when they're creating the college list, but this is not a good way to do this because you won't know if one school is more affordable than another one until after you're admitted and you receive the financial aid award letter. A better way to account for the cost using the college list is to include in-state colleges because they're generally going to be cheaper than private or out-of-state public colleges. College application deadlines are also a way to take into account cost because some deadlines coincide with when the admissions committee reviews scholarships and special programs like honors programs that sometimes come with opportunities that provide funding, such as tuition or paid internships. The University of Maryland at College Park is an example. Their priority deadline is when they consider students for scholarships and special programs. I recently read an article in the Heshinger Report that there have been a number of college closings in the past few years, and it has increased to one college per week. While this primarily concerns for-profit colleges, it is good to be aware of because there's a possibility that this could impact tuition increases. Generally speaking, colleges with large endowments, such as Ivy Leagues, are more stable, and the stability is reflected in their rankings. A general rule of thumb is to avoid for-profit colleges for a number of reasons. I believe this is the end of my presentation.
Does anyone have any questions?
There actually is one in the chat from Robin. When a student has had significant life events in 11th grade that affect academic performance, for example, a parent battling cancer, a personal health issue that flared up during this time, or even a mental health hospitalization, how do you include that information in applications?
So the first thing is, if you can either say in the chat or if you're able to unmute yourself, is it impacting their grade, their
Yes.
involvement in activities?
Yes. And I mean, I'm a family therapist, so I'm asking the question globally
Generally.
on the number of families, but it typically only comes up when the student's academic performance has declined during that year. Or maybe they had a health issue. Like we had one family where a child was participating in a clinical trial around like a chronic health condition that the child had. And the medication in the clinical trial affected the child really negatively, and it made it really difficult for him to function in school in that particular year. So those kinds of situations.
So those are situations that I love because it's actually, and it can help the college to essentially not hold it against the student. And so the best way to do it, like a mistake that students often make is they think, oh, I need to explain it in my essay. You don't want to explain it in your essay unless you focused on like that might be the overarching story, but it's really focused on something else that you're trying to show. But the best way to do it is in all the Common App has it, but some schools have their own that they require you to use. And what you would do is include relevant information in what's called the additional information section. So they'll give you a section where you can just talk about, freely. And so that's the best place to put it because you're giving the information, but you're not sacrificing, of the application where that will make them competitive. Like you don't want to use that for your general essay and then there's no general essay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? I'm reading about ice cream flavors.
Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you so much, Sumaiya, for doing this presentation, sharing your knowledge and expertise with everybody in the community. Truly appreciate it. I will email all of you the recording along with her contact information, so that way you will all have it as well if you want to connect. I will also send you Fusion information along with what we have to offer for post-secondary. I think it's really incredible that there are multiple services in our community that serve our neurodiverse students. And just have a wonderful, safe, long holiday weekend. And I look forward to seeing you guys all soon. Take care.
Thanks for attending.
Bye.
Thank you.